The gala lights of Washington still clung to Isabella Monroe's skin like the faint shimmer of champagne bubbles. She had been the last to leave her father's charity event, slipping away while he shook hands and charmed donors. The ballroom's golden chandeliers and flashing cameras had been overwhelming, but nothing compared to the weight of being the senator's daughter. 24 years old, she was used to walking red carpets, smiling at reporters and posing beside her father, Senator Charles Monroe, a man adored by the public as one of the nation's most charismatic black politicians. Yet Isabella knew the public's picture-perfect version of her father was only one face. Behind closed doors he was sharp, calculating and secretive, always on the phone, always in a meeting that couldn't be interrupted. Her driver's SUV hummed down the Virginia backroads. She leaned her head against the cool glass, the night outside dense with trees and shadows. Her phone buzzed in her lap, a friend's message. "You okay?" That gala was brutal. She typed back, "I'll survive," just as the vehicle slowed. Isabella glanced up. Headlights appeared in the rearview mirror, too close. "Marcus?" she asked her driver, frowning. Before he could respond, a black SUV swerved in front of them, tires screeching on the asphalt. Another car boxed them in from behind. Her chest tightened. The driver cursed under his breath, but before he could maneuver, men in masks spilled out, weapons flashing under the moonlight. "Stay down, Miss Monroe," Marcus shouted, reaching for the door. It all happened too fast. The back door was yanked open, gloved hands grabbed her, and something sharp pricked her neck. Darkness swallowed her before she could scream. Isabella's eyes fluttered open to the scent of leather and sandalwood. For a moment she thought she was still dreaming. Then her vision cleared. She lay on a velvet chaise, sunlight filtering in through towering drapes. The room around her was enormous, elegant, and strange, too perfect, too controlled. She bolted upright. A crystal chandelier sparkled above, its drops catching the light. The walls were painted ivory, adorned with oil paintings of stern men and silent landscapes. A gilded mirror reflected her wide eyes and disheveled curls. Panic surged through her chest. She stumbled to her feet. The door was locked. She tried the window, sealed shut with steel reinforcements hidden beneath the frame. She pressed her forehead to the cool glass, staring down into manicured gardens and a fountain that gushed like it belonged in a European palace. Guards in black patrolled below. "What the hell is this?" she whispered. The door clicked open behind her. Isabella whirled around. A man stepped inside, tall and composed, dressed in a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been tailored thread by thread. His presence filled the room before he even spoke. He wasn't masked like the men who had taken her. No, he was deliberate, exposed, as though he owned not just the mansion but the air she breathed. "Miss Monroe," he said in a smooth, deep voice. "You're awake." She swallowed hard, her palms sweating. "Who are you? Where am I?" The man closed the door behind him with unhurried grace. He had sharp features, cheekbones cut like marble, lips firm, eyes a stormy gray that seemed both cold and consuming. His skin was fair, though there was a darkness in his aura that eclipsed any softness. He moved closer, hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. "My name is Paul Blackwell." The name struck her. She'd heard whispers, Blackwell Industries, a dynasty that had vanished from the headlines after a scandal years ago. She remembered articles about a hostile takeover, rumors of tragedy. Her father had called the Blackwells a family of wolves too weak to survive. Her chest tightened. "You kidnapped me," Isabella said, forcing steel into her voice. Paul tilted his head slightly as though testing her resolve. "I did." "Why?" He smiled faintly, though there was no warmth in it. "Because leverage, Isabella, is sometimes more valuable than money. And you, unfortunately, are your father's greatest weakness." Anger surged through her fear. "You think you can just lock me in some gilded cage and he'll bow to you?" She laughed bitterly even though her voice shook. "You don't know my father." Paul studied her for a long moment. His silence pressed down on her until her breath hitched. Then he walked past her, unbothered, and pulled the drapes wider. Sunlight bathed the room, revealing the vastness of the estate. Acres of forest stretched beyond the gardens, a private lake glimmering in the distance. The mansion wasn't just a house. It was a fortress. "I know your father better than you realize," Paul said quietly. "I know every deal he's made in the shadows. Every man he's destroyed to climb higher. Including my family." Isabella's heart pounded. "You're lying." "Am I?" His gaze cut back to her, sharp enough to pierce. "You'll find the truth soon enough. But until then you'll remain here. Safe." She scoffed. You call this safe? You've kidnapped me. His lips twitched, almost amused by her defiance. Safe from the world outside. Safe from the men who would kill you first to break your father. She froze. The weight of his words sank into her bones. Paul moved closer, so near she could see the faint scar along his jawline, a mark that hinted at violence. His scent, clean, expensive with a hint of cedar, made her dizzy. He lowered his voice, intimate and dangerous. You're not my prisoner, Isabella. You're my insurance. Her jaw clenched. You won't get away with this. The FBI, the press, they'll hunt you down. He gave a low, humorless laugh. They already know. In fact, he picked up a remote from the table, pressed a button, and the flat-screen TV on the far wall flickered to life. Isabella's stomach lurched. On the screen, a news anchor spoke gravely. Breaking news tonight. Senator Charles Monroe has confirmed that his daughter, Isabella Monroe, was abducted on a Virginia highway late last night. The kidnappers have released a video demanding that the senator comply with undisclosed terms. Federal authorities are investigating. The video cut to grainy footage of Isabella unconscious in the back of a van, her head slumped. The ransom note scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Senator Monroe must meet the demands within 7 days, or face the consequences. Isabella's knees weakened. She staggered back against the chaise, her breath coming in shallow bursts. Paul muted the screen, his eyes never leaving hers. You see? The stage is already set. The world knows. But your father? He stepped closer, his gaze darkening. Your father will not pay with money. He will pay with truth. Her mind reeled. Truth? Paul leaned down, his face inches from hers. I will make him confess. Every lie, every betrayal. And you, Isabella, you will be the reason he finally bends. She stared at him, her pulse thundering. His nearness was suffocating, his certainty terrifying. And yet beneath his cruelty there was something else. A shadow of grief in his eyes. A hunger for justice that burned deeper than greed. I hate you, she whispered. Paul's smile was slow, chilling. Good. Hate is honest. Hate means you're alive. He straightened, adjusting his cufflinks as though the conversation had been casual. Dinner is at 8. You'll dine with me. I suggest you wear something from the wardrobe I had prepared. You'll find it stocked to your tastes. Her head snapped up. How the hell would you know my tastes? His gray eyes glinted. I know more about you than you think. With that, he turned and strode to the door. As it closed behind him, the lock clicked into place, leaving Isabella alone with her racing heart and the suffocating opulence of her golden prison. She pressed her fists against the velvet cushions, fury bubbling hot in her veins. He thought she was leverage. He thought she would break. But Isabella Monroe had grown up in the shadow of a man who controlled Washington with a smile and a lie. If Paul Blackwell wanted to use her against her father, he was about to learn that Isabella was no pawn. Still, her reflection in the gilded mirror showed the tremor in her hands, the fear in her dark eyes. For the first time in her life, Isabella wasn't sure whether her father could save her. And worse, she wasn't sure she wanted him to. The wardrobe was a violation in itself. Isabella stood in front of the towering armoire, doors flung wide, her fingers tracing the fabrics with reluctant awe. Silk gowns in jewel tones, tailored blazers, delicate blouses, and even casual denim hung in neat rows. Beneath them, boxes of designer heels were stacked like soldiers waiting for orders. Every item was her size. Every cut reflected her style. Her stomach twisted. How had Paul Blackwell known? She chose the plainest thing she could find, a simple cream blouse and black trousers, and dressed quickly, her hands trembling with suppressed fury. He wanted her to feel indebted, pampered, like a doll dressed for his amusement. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. At 8 o'clock sharp, the lock on her bedroom door clicked. 2 guards in dark suits waited in the hall, silent as statues. One gestured down the corridor. Isabella lifted her chin and walked between them, her heels striking against polished marble floors. The hallway was lined with portraits, stern-faced Blackwells in heavy gold frames. She recognized none of them, but every painted gaze seemed to follow her. The guards opened tall double doors, revealing a dining room fit for royalty. A long mahogany table stretched across the room, gleaming under the glow of a crystal chandelier. A fire crackled in the hearth, throwing shadows along the paneled walls. At the far end of the table sat Paul Blackwell. He didn't rise as she entered. He was already watching her, his storm-gray eyes unreadable, a glass of red wine resting loosely in his hand. His suit jacket had been discarded, sleeves rolled to his elbows, exposing strong forearms and a faint scar near his wrist. "Sit," he said simply. Every part of Isabella bristled. But she crossed the room and took the chair opposite him, determined not to show fear. Servants appeared as if conjured from shadows, setting silver-domed plates before them. The smell of roasted duck, garlic butter, and fresh bread filled the air. Isabella kept her hands folded in her lap. "I'm not hungry." Paul arched a brow. "You will eat." "No." His lips curved faintly, like her defiance amused him. He cut a piece of meat and ate it slowly, deliberately. The firelight danced across his face, casting him in shifting shades of warmth and shadow. "Your stubbornness is admirable," he said finally. "But unnecessary. You'll need your strength." "For what? More of your games?" Paul set down his knife with a quiet clink. His gaze sharpened, pinning her where she sat her day. "This is not a game, Isabella. Your father made choices. I am holding him accountable." She leaned forward, anger sparking in her chest. "By abducting me?" "Yes." His calmness infuriated her. "He built his career on the ruin of others, on my family's ruin. Now, the same blood that elevated him will be the weight that brings him down." "Blood?" Her voice cracked. "You mean me?" Paul studied her, his expression unreadable. For a fleeting second, she thought she saw something raw flicker in his eyes, pain, loss, but it vanished as quickly as it came. "You are his daughter," he said. "His pride, his weakness. He cannot ignore you. That is why you are here." Her throat tightened. "You think you know my father, but you don't. He doesn't bend. He doesn't break. And if you think he'll destroy himself just to save me," she shook her head, biting back tears, "you're a fool." Silence stretched between them, broken only by the pop of the fire. Then Paul stood. He moved with predatory grace, circling the table until he stood beside her. Isabella's pulse thudded in her ears as he leaned down, his hand braced on the back of her chair. His voice was low, dangerous, but intimate enough that she could feel his breath against her ear. "Your father will bend. Because if he doesn't, I'll expose him. Piece by piece. And when the public sees the man behind the polished smile, when his empire crumbles beneath the weight of his lies, you will be the one watching by my side." Isabella jerked away, standing so quickly her chair scraped the floor. "I will never stand by your side." Paul straightened, regarding her with a cool intensity. "You already are." Her hands shook with rage. "You're insane." "Perhaps." He picked up his wine glass again, unbothered, as if their confrontation had been a passing storm. But insanity is often just another word for vision. She glared at him. "What do you want from me, Paul? To sit here quietly while you destroy my family? To smile while you turn me into some kind of bargaining chip?" He took a sip of wine, then set the glass down, his gaze never leaving hers. "I want you to understand the truth. And then I want you to decide which side you're on." Her breath caught. "Side." Paul leaned forward, his elbows resting lightly on the table. "Yes. Because soon, Isabella, you'll realize that your father is not the man you think he is. And when that moment comes, you will have a choice, to defend him or to expose him." Her chest tightened, confusion and fear tangling in her stomach. "You're lying." "Am I?" His voice was soft, but it carried the weight of certainty. She hated him. She hated the calm authority in his tone, the way he looked at her like she was both a captive and a confidant. She hated that part of her, deep down, feared he might be right. The room fell into silence again, heavy and suffocating. Finally, Isabella sat back down, her movements stiff. She picked up her fork and stabbed a piece of bread, if only to keep her hands from trembling. Paul's lips curved faintly. "Good. You're learning." They ate in strained silence. Every bite felt like a battle, every glance like a challenge. By the time the plates were cleared, Isabella's nerves were frayed to threads. Paul rose, signaling the end of the meal. "Tomorrow you'll be shown the grounds. There are rules, of course, but I believe in giving my guests a measure of freedom." She laughed bitterly. "Freedom? In a prison?" His gaze darkened. "A cage can still be golden, Isabella. You'll find it more bearable if you stop rattling the bars." With that, he turned and strode out, the door closing behind him. The guards fell into step outside, leaving Isabella alone in the cavernous dining room. She gripped the edge of the table, her nails digging into the polished wood. Paul Blackwell thought he could control her. He thought she would bend like her father. But Isabella Monroe had no intention of surrendering. Still, when she glanced at the darkened windows, her own reflection staring back at her, doubt whispered in the back of her mind. What if Paul was right? What if her father wasn't the man she believed him to be? The thought lingered long after she was escorted back to her room, settling over her like the shadows that crept through the mansion halls. And somewhere deep inside, beneath her fury, a new fear began to take root. Not of Paul Blackwell, but of the truth. The mansion felt alive. Isabella had been allowed for the first time to roam the grounds. Not freely, 2 guards shadowed her at every turn, but more than the 4 suffocating walls of her bedroom. The morning air was cool, carrying the faint scent of roses and wet stone. The garden stretched wide, perfectly manicured with fountains and marble statues. Gravel paths wound through hedges trimmed with military precision. Yet, beneath the beauty, Isabella felt an unease she couldn't shake. It wasn't just the guards. It was the silence. The estate was too quiet for a home this large. No children's laughter, no barking dogs, no warmth. It was beautiful but hollow. Her footsteps crunched against the gravel as she trailed her fingers along the cool edge of a fountain. A statue of a woman holding an urn poured water endlessly into the basin below. Isabella's reflection wavered in the ripples. "You look like her," a voice said. Isabella's heart jolted. She spun around. Paul Blackwell stood at the edge of the path, hands in his pockets. His gray eyes weren't fixed on her but on the statue. "Like who?" she asked cautiously. He didn't answer right away. His gaze lingered on the stone woman, carved with delicate features, a serene expression frozen in time. Finally he said, "My mother." The words landed heavily, unexpected. Isabella searched his face, but his expression remained unreadable. He stepped closer, the gravel crunching softly under his polished shoes. "She loved this garden," he said. "Every rose bush, every statue, she chose them herself." His jaw tightened slightly. "It's the only part of this place that still feels like hers." Isabella studied him, surprised by the quiet rawness in his voice. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Paul seemed to catch himself. His posture straightened, the softness gone as quickly as it appeared. "Come. There's something you need to see." The guards fell in step as he led her back into the mansion. They moved through hallways lined with more portraits, Blackwells in every generation, their wealth and power painted into every brushstroke. Isabella's unease deepened. At last, Paul stopped before a heavy oak door and pushed it open. The room inside wasn't like the rest of the mansion. It wasn't polished or staged, it was alive. Papers cluttered the desk, books filled every shelf, and a massive corkboard covered one wall, plastered with photographs, newspaper clippings, and red string connecting them in a chaotic web. Isabella froze. Her father's face stared back at her from 6 photographs. Newspaper headlines screamed his name alongside words like fraud, corruption, scandal. "What is this?" she whispered. Paul stepped past her, his presence commanding even in the chaos. "Evidence." Her eyes darted across the board. Some articles she recognized, minor controversies that her father's campaign had brushed aside. But others she had never seen. Offshore accounts, closed-door deals, whispers of money funneled through shell companies. Her stomach turned cold. "This is lies," she said, but her voice wavered. "Is it?" Paul pulled a folder from the desk and handed it to her. "Go on. Read." Her hands shook as she flipped through the documents. Bank statements, transaction records, signatures she recognized as her father's. "No," she breathed. This has to be fabricated." Paul's gaze was steady, unflinching. "I wish it were." She snapped the folder shut and shoved it back at him. "You expect me to just believe this? Because you say so?" "I expect you to see what's in front of you." Her chest tightened. The room seemed to tilt around her, the photographs and headlines blurring together. She wanted to scream, to deny it all, but the weight of the papers in her hands made it harder to breathe. "My father," her voice cracked. "He's not perfect. But he's not this." Paul's expression softened, just slightly. "I know what it's like to want to believe. To hold on to the image of someone you love, even when the truth cuts deeper than any blade." His eyes flicked to the corkboard, then back to her. "But lies don't protect us. They only chain us." She hated him for sounding almost gentle. She hated him for planting seeds of doubt in her heart. But most of all, she hated herself for feeling them take root. She turned away, blinking back tears. "You're using me. You don't care what this does to me, you just want to hurt him." Paul's voice was low but unyielding. "I want justice." The word hung in the air, heavy with old grief. Before Isabella could reply, a phone rang. One of the guards stepped forward, murmuring something into his earpiece before handing the device to Paul. Paul's jaw tightened as he listened, his free hand curling into a fist at his side. "What is it?" Isabella asked. He ended the call without answering. His gray eyes burned as they met hers. "Your father. He's already moving. Covering tracks. Paying off allies." Relief surged through her chest, clashing violently with guilt. Of course her father would fight back. He wouldn't crumble under Paul's threats. But then Paul added, his voice like ice, "And he's already willing to risk you to keep his empire intact." The words hit harder than any slap. Isabella staggered back, shaking her head. "No. He would never." Paul stepped closer, his presence looming, his intensity wrapping around her like chains. "He already has." Her lips parted, but no sound came. Paul reached out, his fingers brushing her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Soon, Isabella, you'll see him for what he is. And when you do," his voice dropped, almost a whisper, "you'll understand why you belong here. With me." Her breath caught. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the heat of his touch, the fire in his gaze. Then she tore herself away, her pulse hammering in her ears. "No," she whispered, backing toward the door. "I will never belong to you." But even as the guards escorted her back to her room, the image of her father's name sprawled across those damning documents burned behind her eyes. And late that night, lying awake in the darkness, Isabella pressed her palms against her temples, fighting the war inside her. Paul Blackwell was her captor. Her enemy. The man destroying her family. But what terrified her most was the shadow of doubt whispering that he might not be wrong. The phone was heavier than it should have been. Isabella sat on the edge of the bed, the device cold against her ear, her fingers clenching the sheets. The guards had brought it in under Paul's orders, her opportunity to speak to her father. The man who could end this nightmare with a single decision. Static crackled. Then his voice came, smooth, commanding, achingly familiar. "Isabella." Her throat tightened. "Daddy." For a moment, the distance between them collapsed. She was a child again, safe in his arms, believing every word he spoke was truth. But reality surged back, bitter and sharp. "I'm okay," she whispered, glancing at the guard stationed by the door. "They haven't hurt me." "Good." His tone was clipped, controlled. Too controlled. "Tell me where you are. I'll have men there within the hour." Isabella swallowed hard. "I don't know. Somewhere, outside the city. A mansion." Her voice faltered. "Paul Blackwell has me." Silence. Then coldly, "Blackwell is a criminal. A vulture. You don't believe a word he's told you." Her fingers tightened around the phone. "He showed me things, Daddy. Documents. Evidence. About you. That evidence is fabricated." His reply was swift, automatic. "He wants to poison you against me. But, Isabella." His voice sharpened, cutting her off. "I need you to listen. Do not let him inside your head. I've built everything I have for you. For us. You must trust me." Her chest ached. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to bury her doubts beneath the weight of his conviction. But Paul's words echoed in her mind. "He will risk you to protect his empire." Tears blurred her vision. "Then meet him halfway," she begged. "Find common ground. Stop this before it destroys everything." Another silence stretched, heavy as stone. When her father finally spoke, his words froze her blood. "There is no compromise. Blackwell wants me broken. That will never happen. Do you understand?" Her lips parted. "But what about me?" Pause. "Just long enough for the air to fracture. Stay strong, Isabella. I'll bring you home. No matter the cost." The line went dead. She lowered the phone slowly, her hand trembling. No matter the cost. But to whom? To what? The door opened and Paul stepped inside. He dismissed the guards with a flick of his hand. "Well?" His voice was quiet but sharp. Isabella rose to her feet. "He won't negotiate." Paul's jaw tightened, but there was no surprise in his eyes. "I expected as much." She searched his face, anger and despair colliding in her chest. "You set me up. You wanted me to see it for myself." "Yes." His honesty cut deeper than any lie. She turned away, pacing the room, her hands twisting together. "He says you're fabricating everything. That it's all a trap. And you believe him?" "I don't know." The words ripped out of her, raw and desperate. She whirled on him, her dark eyes flashing. "You've both turned me into a pawn in your war. I'm not a weapon. I'm not leverage. I'm his daughter. I'm your prisoner. And I'm sick of being nothing but a chain between you." For the first time, Paul's composure cracked. His gaze darkened, but not with anger, with something dangerously close to sorrow. "You are not nothing," he said, each word heavy, deliberate. "You are the proof that men like your father can bleed. And you are the only reason I haven't already burned his empire to ash." Her breath caught. He stepped closer, closing the space between them. His voice lowered, intimate, unyielding. "You think you're here because of him. But the truth is, Isabella, you're here because of me." Her pulse hammered. "What does that mean?" Paul's eyes searched hers, gray depths shadowed with something she couldn't name. "It means I can't let you go." The air crackled between them, thick with everything unsaid. Then a loud crash shattered the moment. Both of them froze. Another crash echoed through the mansion, wood splintering, glass shattering. Shouts rang out, sharp and panicked. Paul moved instantly, shoving Isabella behind him as the door burst open. A guard stumbled in, blood streaking down his face. "They've breached the gate," the guard shouted. "Armed men, Monroe's?" Isabella's heart stopped. Her father had found her. Chaos erupted in the hallway, gunfire, screams, the pounding of boots. The fortress of marble and glass shook under the assault. Paul grabbed Isabella's wrist, dragging her toward the balcony doors. "Stay with me." "No." She pulled back, panic clawing her chest. "They're here to save me." He turned on her, his grip iron, his voice a growl. "They're not here for you, Isabella. They're here for me. And if they have to kill you to get to me, they will." Her blood ran cold. "Choose," Paul demanded, his face inches from hers, his eyes blazing. "Trust the man who caged you, or the man willing to sacrifice you. Right now. Choose." The walls shook with another explosion. Smoke curled under the door. Guards shouted orders in the distance. Isabella's breath came in ragged gasps, her heart slamming against her ribs. Her father's men were inside. Paul's hand was locked around hers. The world was breaking apart. And as the balcony doors shattered inward, a figure in black tactical gear surged through the smoke, rifle raised, face hidden. Isabella's scream tore from her throat. "Daddy's orders," the man barked. "Take the girl?" Paul pulled her against his chest, his arms steel around her. His voice was a snarl of fury. "Over my dead body." And in that instant Isabella realized, someone was about to die.